There's a scene in the Martin Scorsese movie, The Irishman, whenever a person goes up to Robert De Niro's character and needs a favor. And he needs this favor because he is, quote, a little concerned. De Niro explains that whenever someone says they're a little concerned, they're actually very concerned. And then the guy says, actually, I'm more than a little concerned, which De Niro explains means he's desperate. I think we're officially at the point where I am a little concerned about Oneil Cruz in 2026. Good morning, and welcome to Offbeat here on North Shore 9, presented by FanDuel. My name is Alex Stumpf, and this is a daily look at your Pittsburgh Pirates. Oneil Cruz suffered a hand injury all the way back in early June, and originally, the x-rays came out fine. And they thought this is a day-to-day thing. Then he reported, some persistent pain. They get more imaging done. He needs to go on the injured list. This is something that's going to be measured in weeks. That's a blow. That was a blow. But stuff happens in baseball. There are going to be injuries like that across the league, especially with something in the hand where there's so many little bones, so many things that could get hurt. That's something that, this is a day-to-day thing too. No, this needs some time. And that's fine. Heal up. I want that to be a very important theme throughout all of this. He needs to be healthy. Not advocating rushing him or, risking making the injury worse or anything like that. Then All-Star break happens. That first series back from Cleveland, he gets transferred to the 60-day IL. And there are a lot of eyebrows that were raised. And the question is, okay, how bad is this? I asked Don Kelly there, was there a setback? He said no. And then you kind of look at it, it's like, okay, well, this was probably an injury that was going to be measured in, weeks. It was probably going to be back of the envelope math, probably like 50 days based off of the original projections. So yeah, factor in a rehab assignment. You need a roster spot right now. Okay, transfer him to the 60. Make sure that he's right. And then this last homestand, Director of Sports Medicine, Todd Tomzik, says he's cleared for all baseball activities, which in my head was like, okay, it was that 60 days. He will be back roughly around that 60-day mark or shortly thereafter. I'm recording this on August 6th, but you're hearing it on August 7th. This is the day that Oneil Cruz is eligible to come off of the injured list. And where is he right now? In Milwaukee, General Manager Ben Cherington made himself available to traveling media, and Colin Beasley of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette asked if there was an update with Oneil Cruz, if there is a projected timeline to return. Cherington responded, quote, via Beasley, quote, still don't have a specific date or timeline, but I think we're getting closer all the time. We're waiting for maybe a little bit more information from him, but we're anticipating it happening soon, end quote. Well, we're at the point that he could be eligible to come off of the injured list. He's been cleared for baseball activities for some time, and they're still learning about this injury. They're still learning about when he can return. That's concerning. And again, make sure he's right. That's a big priority here. An injured Oneil Cruz does this team no good. I want to make that perfectly clear right here, but we're at the point of the season that he's missed 60 days. He is going to need a rehab assignment, and maybe this is coming in the very near future, but this is longer than anyone anticipated yet again. And the fact that it's the hand is so concerning, whenever it's hands and wrists, because that's so important to hitting. Oneil Cruz is a hitter who needs slug. He needs to hit the ball hard. He needs to get extra base hits. That is his MO. That is where his OPS is going to be. It's going to be through hitting the baseball hard and it traveling far. That's where his production is going to be. How close to the April-May Oneil Cruz are we going to see down the stretch? Whenever he needs to get his timing back, whenever we don't know the severity of the injury. And this hands are something that can linger for a whole year. Across the league, we've talked about hamate injuries and how devastating it is for a hitter, because even not only is it, something that usually takes weeks or months to come back from, whenever they do come back, they're not 100% that first year. I look at Francisco Cervelli as a pretty key candidate here. Just someone who in Pittsburgh, his first year and a half, how great of a hitter he was. And then he had the hamate injury, and then back half of 2016 and then 2017, he wasn't that much of a hitter. And I really do think the injury played a big part of that. And I'm not saying that's exactly what's going to happen to Oneil Cruz here, but I am a little concerned that it could. Because he is such an important catalyst for this offense. Early on in the year, whenever the Pirates had that great April offensively, and those early parts in May, who was leading that charge in the lineup? It was the outfield. It was Oneil Cruz having a historic April. It was Ryan O'Hearn being everything the Pirates hoped he could be whenever they signed him as a free agent. It was Bryan Reynolds rebounding from that ugly 2025 and putting up a first half of the season that should have received an All-Star nomination, in my opinion. It was the outfield leading the charge. And now we look at this offense and how they have struggled of late. And what's the big issue here? Again, I look at the outfield. Jake Mangum has cooled. He did very well filling in for Oneil Cruz. I'm not throwing any shade here. He had a really good stretch there, but he has cooled of late. Esmerlyn Valdez looks lost at the plate right now. Bryan Reynolds has not been the same hitter in the second half of the season. He is slumping. I'm not saying he's going to slump the whole way, but he has slumped since the All-Star game. Ryan O'Hearn is hurt, and Oneil Cruz, who is supposed to be the center of this whole outfield diamond, is still hurt. And there's no guarantee you're going to get 100% Oneil Cruz back down the stretch. And that's even more important because of the trade deadline and how the Pirates didn't end up picking up a right-handed hitter. And part of the reason why they didn't is they looked at, Connor Griffin and Ryan O'Hearn. They're projected to come back at some point this year. The injury timeline, there is a path where they could come back this year. And you'll get Oneil Cruz back at some point. And a healthy Oneil Cruz, adding him to the lineup, is better than any trade the Pirates could have made to improve this offense. Even against left-handed pitching, which has been the bane of their existence this year. Oneil had some really good at-bats against lefties in April. I think he really turned a corner there. Not saying that he's going to have, like a 900 OPS down there, but a positive force in the battle against left-handers. You don't have to drop him to 7, 8 in the lineup. The Pirates could use someone like him right now. Someone who can drive the ball. With O'Hearn out, you're out, a lot of potential power. With Marcell Ozuna cut, you're out a lot of potential power. I don't think Ozuna was ever going to be the power hitter the Pirates thought he was going to be, but until he was cut, every day there was still that threat of like, hey, we got a guy on our bench who has over 300 career homers here. You have to respect that. Without Cruz, it's not the same lineup, and the outfield isn't producing, and the lineup isn't scoring a lot in the second half of this season. This has been a quite pedestrian offense in the second half so far. Now, pedestrian adding Oneil Cruz, you would think, okay, that puts him back in the mix. This is back to being a good offense, if not a really good offense. But without Oneil Cruz, there are reasons to be a little concerned. Not adding a hitter at the trade deadline is something that I think we're going to be looking back at the last 2 of the months of the season. Again, I was the guy banging the table saying, yeah, add bullpen. Bullpen needs to be the top priority. But whenever I will say that, I'm going to stick by it. I'm not taking that back. That was right. That was the top priority. And they did a good job with that. But whenever I was looking at the offense going, you got to kind of roll with what you have here, focus on the bullpen. I thought, they were going to just drag Ozuna across the finish line for some reason, like they did with Tommy Pham and what they did most of the way with Rowdy Tellez. And B, I thought Oneil Cruz would be back now. I really thought whenever he was transferred to the 60-day, and then you hear he's cleared for all baseball activities, it's like, all right, this is going to be 60 days, maybe 62 or whatever, but like, yeah, 60 days. And it's not. Even if he starts a rehab assignment right now, he needs time to get timing back. He needs to get accustomed to the game again. There's some stretches with it. It's going to take some time. And I know I've said a couple times in the past, like, yeah, I would expect him in the not so distant future or anything. I'm done making predictions or assuming whenever he will come back, because every time we have done that throughout this injury, we've been bitten on the butt. No one should make. I'm not making a single prediction that Oneil Cruz is when he could come back until I see him in Indianapolis or Bradenton starting a rehab assignment. And this is such an important part of this lineup. As good as Bryan Reynolds has been on the whole this year, as good as, the O'Hearn and Lau additions have been, Spencer Horwitz taking that next step, Nick Gonzalez hitting over 300, all those things, it's Cruz who is the guy who really makes this go. He has the ceiling to be one of the game's truly elite hitters. And we've seen some hot and cold stretches every year, in his major league career. But this year, it was a lot more hot than we had seen ever before. No, I don't think he had fully realized his potential, but he looked a whole lot more like that guy who could just take control of a baseball game any given night and just win it for you. And this is a team that, is looking kind of far in the wild card standings right now. They need to right the ship real quick, because you can't fall 6.5, 7.5, 8 games back in August. You don't have much of a path to the postseason, even if there are extra spots available compared to a few years ago. Oneil Cruz is the guy who makes this lineup go. And I don't know when he is going to come back to this lineup. And whenever he does come back, I don't know if he is going to be the same guy that we saw before the injury. I am a little concerned. Thank you so much for listening to Offbeat this week here on North Shore 9 presented by FanDuel. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe wherever you find podcasts, or check us out on YouTube if you want to see my smiling face. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good weekend. We'll talk again Monday.
All right, that wraps up this episode of North Shore 9. Thanks so much for tuning in, whether you're listening on the podcast or catching us on YouTube. If you enjoyed the show, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It really helps us grow. And if you're listening on the podcast, a quick review goes a long way in helping others find the show. Plus, be sure to tell a friend about us. There's always room for more here in the NS9 community. And for those looking to support us a little more, consider joining our Patreon, become an MVP member, and get exclusive perks while helping us continue to bring you more of the Pirates content you love. Thanks again for all your support, and let's go Bucks.